Thank you for tuning into our shed hunting series. Today, we are going to check out a match set of deer antlers found on Illinois public land. Now let's meet this week's Shed King.
There are questions every hunter wants to know. The goal of this series is to examine giant shed antlers from all over the Midwest and beyond to answer one question: where were the antlers found? By knowing that, we can begin to understand more about deer, elk, and where they live outside of hunting season. And more importantly, how to find more shed antlers this spring. Thank you for tuning into Shed Kings. Be sure to hammer that like button and subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.
My name is Matt Bartlett. I hail from the state of Illinois. How long have I been shed antler hunting? That's a tough one. I want to say, it's 2021 now, at least 15 years, 16 years. It's been a long time. How many sheds have I found all time? Probably, if I were to put a number on it, it'd be between 250 and 300. What is my best year of shed hunting ever? Well, as a matter of fact, I think it was 2012. I found 62 sheds. Mind you, I walked several miles. I mean, we had several 10, 12, 13 mile days on that year, and I did really well. Okay, we'll go public land first. The most interesting characteristic of these shed antlers, I would have to say, is probably his brow tines. This deer has outstanding brows. I mean, we're looking, 5.5, 6 inch brows. He also has excellent mass, great tine length, great color. Okay, here we are sitting at my kitchen table. We kind of pulled it out so we could do this. We're gonna actually put a modest tape measure on this public land set of sheds that I found. I'm not an expert scorer. I'm not gonna claim to be. My tools today are my Stanley 35-foot Fat Max and this nice piece of shoestring. 24 2/8. Here we go, G1, brow tine. Okay, G1, 6 2/8. G2, 11 3/8. Going G3 now. That is 10 5/8. Over an inch of a G4 for those out there that are wondering. So we're gonna go ahead and measure that too. So that is 2 inches right on the money. All right, so we're gonna go 4 circumference measurements. 5 4/8. That is right at 4 3/8. 4 1/2, 4 4/8. And one more, 4 1/8. So now we're going to his left side. Same story, we're gonna do the main beam. That one is 23 7/8. G1 is 5 7/8. G2, 11. G3 now, 11 again. Circumference measurement number 1, 4 7/8. Circumference measurement number 2, that is 4 2/8. That is 4 4/8. That one's right at 4. All right, so we have both sides individually scored. We're gonna probably give him, I'm gonna give him a go ahead and have a modest 18 inch spread, because I'm gonna say that's about how he sits off his head. 18 inches is more than fair. It's probably honestly a little tight. So we're gonna go ahead and give him an 18 inch spread. All right, so I figured it up here on paper. The right side is right at 73 inches. It's an outstanding antler. The left side is right at 69 3/8. And that puts him at 142 3/8 without a spread. So a modest 18 inch spread, that gets him at 160 3/8. 160 inch deer, public land. I wish I would have went back the next year to see if I could find him again, but I never did. So what type of habitat were these sheds in? Well, the one shed was in a grass waterway in a pick cornfield, which would have been this side. and it was actually facing back towards the timber. So if the timber is a camera, it was facing this way. So Grant, Garrett, and I kind of grid searched the whole entire draw, and followed several deer trails, followed several ravine ditches that ran down and joined in one spot down on the bottom, and that's where I found this one. Found this one about 200 yards down in the timber, heading back towards a bedding area, or at least what we thought might have been a bedding area next to a humongous lake on this public land, and we matched him up. Where do the majority of my sheds come from? I would say waterways. I do a lot of grass waterway walking, fence lines, field edges, but I would have to say, I would say 75% of the sheds I've ever found have been in grass waterways, whether it be pick bean fields, pick corn fields. It seems like those deer really like to hang out in those kind of areas, especially where I'm from. A lot of those areas that I like to walk are transition areas from bedding to food. They provide good cover for these deer. They're grown up, a few trees here and there that they can maybe rub and get, stacked in next to if they need to get down and out of the wind. So grassy waterways, field edges, very little. I've probably found maybe less than 10% of my sheds in the timber. If I could give one piece of advice for shed hunters wanting to find more antlers, it would be to do your scouting. Get in your truck, get your binos out, take a ride. Find out where these big winter herds of deer are feeding. If you can find the winter herds of deer, check those timbers nearby, get permission, do what you have to do to try to acquire permission to walk on these properties, or get permission to walk where they're feeding. So, food is king this time of year, and that's what the deer are needing, and that's where they're going to be. So I have several sets of antlers that I find pretty interesting that I would like to tell a few stories about. I have 3 match sets at my feet right now. Here's one that I found back in 2012. It's a giant, huge old buck that I found. Matter of fact, I found grassy waterway next to a bedding thicket of pine trees, and then this one was actually right on the edge of the pond, right next to the pine trees. This deer, it's hard to say how old he was, but he's extremely wide, extremely heavy. These sheds were about 80 yards apart. On to the next. This is a deer that Jesse and I actually knew really well for a couple years until he vanished. We called him MJ, and there's a good reason for that, because his dad's sheds are on the floor right next to me as well. This deer lived on our lease for a couple years until he mysteriously disappeared. I found these sheds in a grassy transition area next to our standing bean field. He had been frequenting it all winter. And I found these sheds literally right on top of each other, probably 100 yards from the bean field. We figured he was probably right at the 150 mark as a 3-year-old this year, and we never saw him again after velvet shed in 4. All right, now to Mac. Same farm, same genetics. This deer is 4.5 years old, or 5, the year I shot him, which we just did a little figure in here a few minutes ago, and it would have been probably 2012 or 13 when I shot him with a shotgun. I found these sheds probably 100 yards from where I found his son's shed several years later. It's just amazing how these deer can continue to keep these characteristics from one deer to the next. This deer, I figured his sheds up with an 18-inch spread, which obviously he's probably a little wider than that. He's right at the 175 mark. Just an awesome deer. Got a couple kickers here. Got great tine length, great mass, great beam length. Just an outstanding buck. It's just a shame he never got to be harvested by a hunter. He was killed by a car at 8.5 years old. So that's a sad story to that one. Then I've got a couple big singles here. A Fulton County farm that we had for several years. I found this big single on in a grassy waterway right next to a stock field. Just a really cool deer. He's got, 3 kickers coming off the G2, big 4-point side, busted brow, really heavy base, probably a 4 or 5 inch base, maybe 6 inches. He's really, really heavy deer. Then this shed, Jesse and I were walking probably 200 yards from where I just found, where I had found this one. And Jesse pretty well tripped over this one. It's just an awesome 4-point side, good mass, good color, good tine length. Just a really cool deer. Last but not least, probably my favorite antler in my collection is this one. This deer is actually hanging on my wall to my left right here. I found this shed with my grandpa back in 2004. Found this shed probably 300 yards from where I ended up harvesting the deer. Really cool 5-point mainframe side, few kickers. The next year he would end up throwing, I think 4 or 5 more points on this side, and he ended up scoring 195 inches when I harvested him. So just a really cool thing to have. I found this shed with my grandpa, you know. Growing up hunting with him, it was really important, and I actually harvested the deer when I was with him too, so that one will forever live in my memory as probably my favorite one I ever had.
If you liked this episode, there's more where that came from. Check out the entire Shed Kings playlist on the Last Breath TV YouTube channel and subscribe so that way you never miss an episode.